Hello, everybody. This is Daniel Daily Inspirational Quotes Daily, and we have a new guest today. His name is Robert Wolf. He's going to speak about his experience about his mom, who was a Jewish, and about the Holocaust. It's an honor that I'm going to introduce him to you, going to speak more about himself, about his family background, what happened in the past. Before I just introduce him, my name is Daniel Barnaby. I'm a pastor at English Church South. And then everyone who like support this church, we have a website that called cfi.org. You can donate your donation. After the show, I'm going to post the link. Everybody who like support this church, that we're doing great work for the Lord in the Dominican Republic, together with Pastor Bill Pearson and Peg Pearson. They are both missionaries from the U.S. that came in DR 2005 and start working for the Lord and planting those churches. We have 4 churches there. Your donation will be great help to keep on spreading the word of God. Thank you very much. And today we have our host, Robert Wolf. Thank you for joining us to our podcast today, John. How are you doing today, Robert?
I'm well, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to have you, John, Robert. And but I've been viewing your story about your mom, that tremendous testimony. Tell us more about yourself and the book that you have about, you say, Not an Enemy. And then you can tell us about that book and tell about yourself and your mom and your father. And I believe that they came from Jewish background. Thank you for joining us. You can talk to you about yourself now.
I appreciate it. Well, the book is partly about my mom, but it's about my dad too. The title of the book is Not a Real Enemy, The True Story of a Hungarian Jewish Man's Fight for Freedom. And we can talk about that in a minute. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I was an only child of only children. I'm the only one left. My parents passed away several years ago. I was raised in a public high school. I was one of 3 Jews in a high school that was 40% African American. By the time I graduated high school, I was friends with everybody. And then I was fortunate enough to go to Tufts University in Massachusetts. I just got back from a 40-year class reunion from there. And we had a good time. I can't believe 40 years since graduating college. And then I went to University of Michigan Medical School. And then I became a diagnostic radiologist. I did a 1-year internship in Boston. I did my residency in radiology at Brown University in Providence. And then I did a neuroradiology fellowship at Yale, New Haven. Now we're 30 years old. So after all those years of indentured servitude, I call it, finally got work and started, working a real job. So I've been in the radiology field for about 35 years. I took on this book as, well, we can talk about the history of the book, but Not a Real Enemy, The True Story of a Hungarian Jewish Man's Fight for Freedom is a biography about my dad. It's a history book about Hungary from World War I all the way to the end of the Hungarian Revolution in 1956. It covers persecution. It covers 2 wars. It covers countless persecution, endless pestilence, and on and on. So they did have a few good years in Hungary, but they had many, many harrowing years. And I decided when I saw my dad's story to convert it to a biography. And here we are 6 years later. It's circulating and we're talking about it. And it couldn't come at a more appropriate time, which I'm sure we're going to want to discuss in a little bit too. As you know, what's going on with all the protests and not just protests calling for people to be killed, death and destruction of countries, including the United States. So unacceptable behavior. I'm here to fight it. I'm trying to fight anti-Semitism, hate, and racism. And people that actually read this book get converted in their thinking. I mean, not that most of us are anti-Semitic or racist, but when we read this book, we realize how good we have it in this country, and how what happened to my father could happen to any one of us.
Yes, Robert, thank you so much for it all introduction about yourself. And then the word that you say that's going on, and then we believe that there's an enemy behind that, and everything that you see is not on the person. The devil is using those people. And I believe that in the Bible, while we're in the book of Genesis, where the devil you try to destroy the descendant of Jesus, as you know, Jesus come from Jewish family, and for that reason Satan do everything he can to destroy that offspring, which is Jesus. And then he tried, for the time being, devil tried to hate every family that conform that same generation, that same Jewish family. Because everything is beyond that. There's an enemy. The enemy is not visible. The enemy is Satan. And we can say that because Jewish people never attack anybody. They always attack them first. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a hatred behind that, a hatred from devil. And we can say that, devil will do the best he can to hate all people that come from that generation, that come from that specific group God has been choosing. As you know, God chose those people since in the beginning of the world. After the flood, God chose Noah, and after Abraham begat many generations until we find David, and Jesus come from the tribe of David. And till now, the devil is still fighting to destroy this kind of family. And I believe God will not allow that happen because his promise is fulfilled. And then the only way we can fight those people through the Spirit of God. And you say that before, God only is working, and I believe that the victory belongs to God's people. And then tell us more about your father, because you say the father was about the World War first, and then about the Holocaust. Talk about the Holocaust, because I read about the Holocaust as your mom, fight the Holocaust. Talk to us more about that. You must fought that.
Okay, so my mom, well, I love how you talk about the devil and the hatred that's behind his work. I can't imagine him siding with Hamas and Hezbollah and all these enemy attackers, but in theory, I mean, we could talk about the conflicts, the Palestinian-Israeli conflicts,
yes,
going back to 1948. But the truth of the matter is, you just said it. It goes back to Exodus,
yes,
even more so. I mean, finally Israel has made amends with Egypt and Jordan and many other countries in the Middle East, which is good, just like the United States is trying to. But not to get off the subject, Mom and Dad were so Dad was a kid. He had a pretty good childhood, actually. My dad's parents, who were killed at Auschwitz, they perished at Auschwitz at 50. His dad was a dentist on a Red Cross ship on the Black Sea during World War I. And then he married my dad's mom, and they had Dad, their only child, once they got settled in after the war. And he became a dentist and practiced dentistry. And they were nice people. They gave back to the community. They weren't Orthodox, and they were sometimes shunned for that. There was always already a wide range of viewpoints about the religion, but it hurt them in some ways, including at forced labor camp. My mom, just to keep her things short, I'm finding more things about my mom that I have to review, but she didn't do the whole autobiography like my dad did. Okay. And we can talk about the history of the book in a minute. But Mom ended up hiding as a child during World War II with her mom and grandmother in farms, mostly farmland. So, and fortunately, never fortunately, but Hungary got attacked later during World War II, 43, 44. They were already occupied, but they went on this blitzkrieg. It's not really the right word. That's the 1939 word. But anyway, or 1941 too. But anyway, they went on this. They were losing the war, so they went crazy and went into Hungary and started corralling and expelling Jews. And they did it. They were systematic about it. They already had the method established. So most of the Hungarian Jews that were caught and went to Auschwitz, and most were killed right away. My dad, and including my dad's parents, my mom's grandfather was a rabbi, by the way, and he died at Auschwitz too. So, and it's funny you talk about the descendants, because my mom thinks that we're descendants of Moses and ultimately Jesus. And in the end, we're all descendants of someone, if you want to go back. But
yes,
because the population is growing and growing, but we've all come from somewhere. So my dad didn't have it so good. My dad was a 4-time escape artist. When he was 21, 22, they took him off to forced labor camp. The Jews were conscripted to forced labor camps because they were deemed not worthy to fight in the war. So they didn't have any weapons. All they had were these silly hats and these yellow armbands, and they dragged them out into the middle of nowhere, where they did countless tasks in the cold, in the heat, digging ditches, getting urinated on while they were digging ditches, trying to move rail cars that were stuck, frozen, rusted, impossible to move, trying to avoid beatings, starving most of the time, long hikes here and there, and then foot infections and on and on. verbal abuse, mental abuse, threats to their lives from drunk soldiers. So Dad had it. So actually, my dad ended up with a foot infection when he was in his forced labor camp. They had already been to 2 or 3 different places. But he and his friend Frank, when my dad got out of the hospital, which the doctor, by the way, said, it doesn't matter if we treat your foot infection or not, you're going to be dead soon anyway. Can you believe that? Can you imagine your doctor saying that to you? So
that's so hard. It was so hard.
So it's unbelievable. So they decided to escape, and it was a gutsy escape. They put their lives at risk. And in the middle of the Caspian Mountains in the foothills in the winter, he and his friend Frank took off. And it was a harrowing story. They got away. A third man tried to escape at the same time. They caught him, and they were hiding in the bushes while they were listening to the guards beat up this third man. And it's just brutal. So, I mean, I can't imagine how scared they were at that time. And my dad even thought to himself, oh my God, what have I done? I've made this huge mistake. But they escaped. So they made it down to Budapest. Still were heading towards the end of World War II, but it was still going on. They had some comfortable lodgings, sometimes not so much, but then they got corralled. They got double crossed by some guy with a truck, and they ended up what they called the dog pound, and that was in Budapest. They were in front of Nazi headquarters in Budapest, and they escaped from there. And that escape it's unbelievable. The timing, the way they got away, the way they planned it, between the guards in front of the headquarters and the forced labor camp, and just unbelievable. So this is a miracle. This is a miracle. So now the war's over, and now communist Hungary takes over, and they were no better to the Jews than the Nazis. You know, the communists were notorious anti-religion. Jews were not allowed to have Jewish weddings, for example.
Wow. And
we have a chapter about that my mom's uncle, who was a well-respected doctor, a surgeon, he got hauled off after he married my mom and dad in 1953. And this was under Stalin and his paranoia. Stalin died soon after. Thank God. He should have died 10 years before, because he was no lover of the Jewish people or religion, as for that matter, as far as I'm concerned. That whole system I didn't buy into, and neither did my parents. Mm-hmm. Needless to say, so Dad escapes once as a medical student. He finally got to get into medical school. He became an OBGYN, and then turned around and went back. He for fear of reprisal. And finally, in 1956, after the Hungarian Revolution, 2-week war that not a lot of people know about, 3,000 people died, countless refugees injured, a lot of kids, a lot of young adults. And my dad was doubling down as a trauma surgeon instead of being, in addition to being OBGYN. And Mom ran the blood bank. She was actually a medical student at the time, and she had 13 months to go before she would have graduated. But after that war, after everything they've seen, they took off, and that was a harrowing escape too. So, and they endured anti-Semitism all the way till they got into Austria. Even the border guards, they had to bribe the border guards, and they gave them the rum, whatever they had, and they had to ask them to borrow money just to get a train to Vienna. And even then, they had to endure. They assumed they weren't Jewish since they were out, but hard to believe, and they still had to put up with that. So, believe me, my dad wanted to argue with them, but now is not the time. You know.
I'm sorry to hear
you're
that.
Almost at freedom. So
Robert.
that's kind of the middle. That's kind of the. I mean, there's a lot of. We talk about how my dad grew up in a very comfortable place. They were doing pretty well. Finally, it took them a while. My dad used to get beaten by his father for being late, and they thought my dad was soft, but the beating part may have made him tough. But his mom couldn't protect him. Nowadays, it's tougher to get away with that, of course. But back then, it was just you and your dad and the belt or a stick or whatever. But I think in the end, that made him disciplined. He would beat him for being late, for being tardy, and amongst other things. But it kept my dad in check. So my dad goes through all this with integrity, with determination, with resilience. Mm-hmm. Just wanted to be free, and that's the whole gist of it. The book is so inspiring. My mom and dad wrote the autobiography in 1970s. And they wrote the stories that they had as though they had the previous day. They did pencil and paper to typewriter to computer, and then to disc, which we'll talk about in a minute. And like I said, the smells and the sounds and the feel of the cold. The descriptions were so vivid, and then I was just amazed by miracle after miracle. I mean, and even my dad wasn't that religious, so he was thanking the Lord like every 10 minutes because it's amazing how they got away. And we always talk about the light at the end of the tunnel. You're running, you escape. but where are you going to go? You have no home. If you go back to your home, you're going to get arrested. Your home's already been ransacked and stolen, and you've got new families living there, and they're not going to know who you are. And it was really hard for him. I can't imagine. And then finally, he found out about what happened to his parents months after the war, and that was kind of serendipitous too. He ran into a lady in his hometown, and she sadly she was an eyewitness at Auschwitz, so she survived and told my dad. And luckily, they weren't at Auschwitz too long. I mean, I can't say luckily, but if I had to put up with that, just kill me now. I mean, don't let me sit there for months and years starving and being tortured and ridiculous conditions, as you well know. So I was motivated to turn this book. So my dad died in 1997 and my mom died in 2016. And a historian friend of my hometown handed me the disc. It's now a disc. And I didn't think much of it. I had to take care of mom's affairs, and then I kind of retired for a year. And then I went back to work as a radiologist, and that brought me back to the disc. And so we have two screens in radiology. One is the queue, the list of the patients, and the other is the images. So between cases, on the left, I had my dad's autobiography, and the right, I converted his biography. So that took about a year. Now we're in 2018-19, queried agents and publishers, couldn't get anyone interested. We were about to self-publish, but we found a beta reader who had a friend, Janice Harper, who is my co-author, who turned the book into a very special novel. Conversations to and from home, letters to and from home, converging stories, diverging stories, parallel stories. And now the book has won 4 awards, which I don't even know what to do with. So, I mean, it's such a wonderful honor. All I can say about that is at least people recognize the importance of our work. And these are professional readers and editors.
Do you have the copy of your book right now where you are?
I do. It's, yeah, I mean, here's my the floor model.
Yes, not a real enemy.
I don't want to boast, so
I love that.
Not a real enemy. I mean, I can't believe.
Yes, not a real enemy.
Unbelievable, but I never would have thought this would ever go this far. But I have to thank we had a publisher, Janice and I. We queried agents and publishers, but not many. Janice knew what she's a professional writer. She's a PhD. She did work about Madagascar, of all places. But she's a book coach and she's a good writer. She turned this book, when she saw the story, she said, I would love to take on this project. So, and then we got Amsterdam Publishers took us on, and that's their genre is Holocaust. But they loved the book. They took it on, and here we are. So it's been out for a few months, and I've done Holocaust Museum book signings at the U.S. Holocaust Museum. They've already invited me back, and I got a lot going on. These podcasts are important. Spreading the message of love, not hate. Spreading the message of peace and determination, and understanding how my dad had to live, and then changing and say, oh my God, this could be me. This could be my brother. And here's what I'm trying to do is to try to help stop that from happening. And in as many ways, what's going on in the United States and Israel may not sound similar, but in a lot of ways, it is similar. It's the same thing. It's hate, it's anti-Semitism. And here we are fighting it.
Yes, Robert, thank you so much for all this information about your parents' background, how they suffered, how they leave that legacy to you as an example to us to understand that, hate is not the option. Love is the solution and everything. As you mentioned, that understand that all you can suffer by you as a child, when you were a little boy, when you saw what happened at a time, and then that gives you a feeling that the world is not just. But we do believe, we are here to make a difference. Everything that your father experienced, and then give you an image that you have to find for something positive, so that in the future, this kind of thing will not be repeated again. And then we should have peace and love. This is the message that we would like to portray to all our listeners: love and peace. That those kind of qualities can make a difference to the world. And I'm so happy your book, is not a will enemy. And then I believe everybody can find this book on Amazon. And then I'm going to post the link after the show. You can go and look for it. And then you can support that wonderful work and wonderful message. You can understand that, and then everything is going on right now that we did done in the past. And it's up to us now to stop that by saying no to injustice, no to hatred. That's spreading love of God to people, to make a difference. And then thank you everybody for listening to our podcast, to Robert, that explained everything that happened to his parents. He's the only child son of his parent that survived from all these things. And then he has the reason to leave that legacy so that whenever after 5 years, 10 years, we can still remember those great heroes that make a difference. That's the way it is. And then Robert, we have 5 minutes to end the show. What is the message you would like to give to what happened to this world right now? Is that there's a war between Israel and Hamas. What is the message you would like to share?
We talked about it. Israel is fighting for their own defense, their own survival. I've seen the Benjamin Netanyahu interview. He's an intelligent guy. He cares about Israel. It's not perfect, but I don't think that innocent children and women deserve to be killed, raped, imprisoned, kidnapped, starved, tortured, and the ones that will survive may end up with PTSD. That was another amazing thing about my dad. No sign of PTSD. Ended up redoing his residency in OBGYN in Boston at Beth Israel, esteemed university. And I couldn't get in there myself in any specialty. Okay. And he ended up delivering 10,000 babies in the Detroit area, which we call redemption. So after all he'd been through, after all that death and dying and destruction, he brought 10,000 human beings into the world. The other thing is I am personally donating 10% of my proceeds to the United States Holocaust Museum in DC. And that's in perpetuity. That's ongoing. Even after I'm gone, it's in my trust. And hopefully that ends up being a lot of money over time. It does take time to market a book and to spread the word. But when people read this book, they'll say, oh my God. And part of this, and if you're out there and you read this book and you say, what an amazing book, please write a review on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Goodreads and tell your friends. And if you think it's appropriate, invite me for a book talk. We have a well-received book talk and we can carry this further. Or invite me for a podcast like this one. It's I'm not doing this for, I'm a doctor. I could be practicing. I could be just doing full time and making killer money. And this is what I choose now. So I've been a doctor for a long time, but this is where my heart lies. And it was important being a doctor, but we got compensated for that. This is our own time. This is our own discussions, and it's our own hope. And it couldn't come at a more appropriate time. So. And there's 100 other messages with the book, but I know you said we're out of time. Change your vectors. If you're bored with what you do, change vectors. If you're, give back to the community. There's more to life than food, shelter, and clothing. Give something back. And I guess this is my way of doing it.
Thank you, Robert, for your time today, for your interview about the book. And then please, everybody, go to the Amazon and buy this book. You're gonna be inspired. And then may God bless everybody that be listening. May God keep on blessing you, Robert. And may we can say peace to Israel into the world. God bless everybody. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. God bless. Please. My pleasure. Bye-bye.